Thank you for coming, Naomi.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, how did you first get approached about putting The End of America to film? Because I did get to watch it, and I thought it was a rather excellent documentary, and it really laid out the 10 steps towards a tyrannical government.
Thank you so much. Well, let's see. I got to know Avram Ludwig, who's a film producer, and he reached out to Annie Sundberg and Ricky Stern, who are very, very talented directors who did the award-winning films The Devil Came on Horseback and The Trials of Daryl Hunt, which were, I think, nominated for one of them was nominated for an Academy Award, I believe. Anyway, prize-winning filmmakers. And they thought it was an important message, and to their great credit, they, in a very short time span, racing against the clock, put together this kind of amazing documentary based on my book, but adding many dimensions to the book that only film can do.
Exactly. This reaches a whole other audience, whereas, not that many people read anymore. Obviously, you did a large media junket for the books. You did get national press attention, but I think this is really going to open up the message to the MTV crowd and the younger generation. And what's so really powerful about this film is that although it kind of, is following you around in a lecture, the visuals are really there, the points are well made, and it's not so overwhelming. It doesn't go too far out of the box. I mean, everything you talk about is well documented, and we're going to talk about that on the other side. We're joined by Naomi Wolf, The End of America. It's the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas, PrisonPlanet.tv, Infowars.com. The InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas. We're joined by Naomi Wolf, and we were just discussing the new film, The End of America, an adaptation of her novel. Like I said, it's a little over 60 minutes, and it's just so well done. I really hope this does bring a new audience into the light that, governments throughout history are not only corrupt, but they seize on events and opportunities. And really, in the beginning of your picture, you show how the Nazis seized on the Reichstag fire to pass the Enabling Act and broaden their executive powers.
That's correct. Something that people who are familiar with my book know, but new viewers of the movie may not know, is that I was startled to find so many strong parallels between how the Nazis seized power in the early 30s and how the Bush administration, and their legacy is not being dismantled yet, unfortunately, set about to undermine democracy in America. Step one in the 10 steps to fascism is to invoke a terrifying internal and external threat. And I do, note that the Nazis hyped the threat of this lone arsonist who set fire, allegedly, some historians think it was a kind of a staged attack on the parliament, and the way that the Bush administration hyped or fanned the flames of actual attacks on the United States in order to generate a generalized sense of fear. All would-be dictators do that.
And why don't you talk about some of these parallel documents, such as the Enabling Act, and in this country, we had Patriot Acts 1 and 2, we had the Military Commissions Act, and like you said, it doesn't seem like any of this is being dismantled by this current administration. So what are these things that are still around?
Well, Jason, you've asked the important question. I mean, I had hoped and prayed that Obama, a constitutional scholar, would reverse this kind of nightmare infrastructure of a police state. But, largely he's made cosmetic gestures. It was a beautiful gesture to claim that he was closing Guantanamo in a year, but it's not closed. And, meanwhile, his Justice Department is claiming, even stronger rights in the Bush administration to conceal evidence under the claim of state secrets. He has claimed the right to surveil citizens even more forcibly than the Bush administration claims to. And there's a bill, you guys can go on my Facebook page, there's a bill that's coming up that's going to give the executive the power to shut down the Internet in the event of a national emergency. And, the Patriot Act is still standing. There are 8 idealistic young Americans in Minnesota who protested at the Republican National Committee and who are being charged, facing 8 years in prison and $150,000 fines under the Minnesota Patriot Act, charged as terrorists for engaging in First Amendment freedom of assembly. So, with very minimal gestures in the right direction, the basic infrastructure is still there, and it's going to take a grassroots movement of citizens to force Obama to dismantle the rest of it. And, we don't have any time to waste.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm actually very, very happy for you to talk about the Obama administration, because in this film, you really do make the point that this transcends administrations and that any administration in the future could use these powers. And, Olbermann seems to be coming around. He actually just reported what you just said, that not only are they basically keeping the Bush and Cheney doctrines, but they're expanding on their executive powers on wiretap, on surveillance. And like you said, it's a nice gesture to say that they're going to close down Guantanamo Bay, but that really doesn't mean anything, because when they do move these people, and they haven't done so yet, they're just going to move them to other black sites for renditions. I mean, these things aren't going to end.
Jason, I'm not sure what you said is correct. I'll have to check my sources, because I believe that they've closed down black sites. However, you are correct in that, to my astonishment and horror, the Bush administration is arguing that they still have the right to hold, anyone they claim as a quote-unquote enemy combatant without due process, which is, the cornerstone of a police state. I mean, there is no way to close democracy and crush an open society without the executive or the leader claiming the right to hold a citizen indefinitely without the right to trial, which the founders knew was, fundamental to a democracy. So I was shocked when I found that they're making this claim that they want to be able to hold people indefinitely. They're kind of masters at making gestures toward the Constitution, but not budging, this infrastructure very much at all. It does transcend political parties, and I'm very depressed to have to say that, because I worked very, very hard. I mean, one reason we, fought so hard, Jason, to get this, movie out there before the election was we were really, I have been an Obama partisan. We were really seeing that with a McCain-Palin win, they were going to lock down the police state, and we were betting that Obama would push back on some of these things, and I'm appalled that. Well, you know what? I shouldn't say I'm appalled. The founders were very wise people, and they knew, and they said that any leader, any faction, any majority, any minority, if they seized excessive power, would abuse power, and that's why they set up this beautiful system of checks and balances that has eroded so much, because they recognize that it's human nature to seize power. So in a way, while I'm shocked that Obama has not really dismantled this infrastructure and is some way building on it, I shouldn't be so surprised, because our founders, more than 200 years ago said you need these checks and balances because people will grab power if they can.
Absolutely. And, you discussed that you have a bill up on Facebook. Is this 1444, or is this a separate bill that's trying to shut down the Internet? Because I know 1444 introduced some compulsory service things and mandatory service things, but I wasn't sure if it had anything specifically to do with the Internet. Is that a separate bill that they're trying to clamp down on the Internet?
Jason, I imagine, people can go to the Facebook page. I'm sorry, I'm 46, so I'm new at this technology. I don't have the name of the bill or the number to hand, but if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see it. It gives the executive the power in an emergency to just close it down, to take control of it. And it's very disturbing. There are other bills coming up that are very, very disturbing. I understand that there's money being allocated to these FEMA sites, which have not been fully reported out, but are a distressing presence on the landscape. And the thing that bothers me most, and that I'm most concerned about as a mother, is the fact that the military has been deployed in the United States just before the November election. The 1st Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division was redeployed by Bush from Iraq to the United States of America, and right after the election, they redeployed 2 more brigades, that's 3,700 warriors, to somewhere in the U.S. And Obama is committing, and not just Obama, we're on track to have 20,000 military serving in the United States by 2012. So what's happening is the people are being acculturated to being policed by the military. And there's evidence that the military was advising the police in Minneapolis, where you saw these extremely militaristic, very, very brutal assaults on citizens who are engaging in the right to protest. And I have to tell you, as a student of closing societies, when the military is sent to police civilians, it's over. I mean, that is the thing that citizens have to rally around. I think that's the most burning issue, is going back to the Posse Comitatus Act and getting the military back, out of civilian policing. Our founders kept us safe for 200 years from military policing because they knew from firsthand experience how dangerous it is to have to have an army, even one's own army, policing civilians. The National Guard reports to the people. The National Guard reports to governors, to us, and that's who has been policing America.